The human was using its own blood as a sealant. HFY had been a diplomatic courier for 11 cycles. She had logged 43 transit passages, filed reports on 9 species, survived 2 hull failures, and 1 attempt at piracy. She had a precise internal taxonomy for every kind of sentient behavior she had ever observed. It was, her instructors had told her, the finest threat assessment instinct in her cohort. None of it was doing anything useful right now. The human, Vasquez, the station's maintenance technician, short and broad, and covered in a substance that HFY's chemical receptors identified as hydraulic sealant, and also, underneath that blood, had pressed her hand against the ruptured plasma conduit and held it there. The conduit was live. The heat was sufficient to fuse organic tissue to metal at contact. HFY knew this because she was watching it happen, and her magnetoreception was recording the precise ferrous signature of the station's atmosphere, changing composition around them as the human's blood oxidized in the heat and plugged the leak. The station groaned. Another impact. The Rachnoth siege fleet had dropped out of transit 14 minutes ago. 17 ships, no hailing frequency, no declaration, no protocol, and Relay Station Keth 9 was now a grid of rupture corridors and failing systems and one human who appeared to be using herself as a repair component. HFY's carapace was ringing. She could hear it. That thin, crystalline harmonic her plates produced under extreme distress, a frequency that would tell any other Vethkari in range that she was at the edge of her processing threshold. There were no other Vethkari in range. The human had not noticed. The human was humming. It was not a distress vocalization. HFY checked. There was no pattern in it that corresponded to any distress signal in any catalog she carried. It was a low, rhythmic sound, almost subauditory, almost structural. She felt it through the deck more than heard it with her acoustic membranes. The human was making music, while fusing her hand to a plasma conduit. During a siege. Category, anomalous. HFY opened a notation field in her internal log, and then closed it again because she did not know what to put in it. The conduit stopped venting. Vasquez pulled her hand free. There was a sound. HFY would not describe the sound in her official report. She would describe the outcome. The conduit was sealed, the corridor pressure was stabilizing, and the human was examining the wound on her palm with the focused, detached attention of a technician assessing a mechanical fault. Vasquez said. That was all. As though the data was interesting, but not urgent. She reached into the tool harness at her hip and produced a length of gray fabric, torn from something worn thin, reused until the edges had frayed into threads, and wrapped her hand. The knot she tied was fast, practiced. 5 loops. HFY counted them without deciding to. We need comms, Vasquez said, not looking up. Relay array is 1 level up. You can move. HFY processed the question. Her carapace was still ringing. She had a laceration across 2 of her middle plates from shrapnel, leaking a slow pale fluid that would clot within the hour. Her species healed efficiently enough, and her magnetoreception was overwhelmed by the electromagnetic chaos of the bombardment, which was the sensory equivalent of being screamed at by 17 voices at once. I can move, she said. Good. Vasquez looked up at the ceiling for a moment. The station shuddered. Another impact, distant this time, the sound like something enormous settling, and the human's eyes tracked the vibration pattern with what HFY's instruments registered as professional assessment. Not fear. Not the neurochemical cascade that every species HFY had studied produced under mortal threat. Something quieter. Older. That one was the cargo ring, Vasquez said. They're walking it around the station. Probably looking for the docking arms. How do you know? That's what I do. She started moving. Come on. HFY followed. She noted, for her internal log, that she had not made a tactical decision to follow. She had simply followed. This was the first data point she could not categorize. The Vethkari had a word, Velthan. For the moment, a rational being accepted that continued resistance was mathematical self-destruction. Every species HFY had studied had an equivalent. The Rachnoth called it Gethrak, the final calculation. The Mary Dow called it the last breath before the dive. The galactic consensus was that recognizing Velthan early was not surrender. It was intelligence. The Vethkari had built their entire survival doctrine around it. She was watching Vasquez move through a corridor that was venting atmosphere from 3 separate breach points, one arm trailing the wall as if reading the station's damage through her fingers, and she was searching for Velthan in the human's behavior. It was not there, not suppressed, not deferred, not calculated against future odds. Simply absent. The station was in pieces, the fleet outside had 17 warships, and there was no Velthan in this human at all, the way there was no wing joint in a burrowing animal. Not missing, not removed. Never there. SCKVF filed this under anomalous and kept walking. The relay array was a wreck. 2 of the 3 transmitter arrays had taken direct hits. The third was intact, but its power coupling had sheared. Vasquez opened the housing, assessed the damage for approximately 4 seconds, and began working. Her bandaged hand made the fine work awkward. She switched to the other hand, compensated, continued. SCKVF watched the corridor. Her magnetic sense, even scrambled, could still detect the hull stress patterns. She could feel the Rachnoth fleet above them. 17 ships' worth of electromagnetic signature pressing against the station's own resonance like a fist against a membrane. The math was not good. The math was, in fact, the worst math she had performed in her life. "Tell me the tactical situation," Vasquez said, not looking up from the coupling. 17 Rachnoth warships. Station shields are down. Docking arms will be targeted next, after which we lose evacuation capability. Station population is, she checked her last count, 43, with an estimated 14 injured in the initial strike. "I do not have weapons. The station has point defense turrets. 4 operational before the attack. I do not have current status." Edo. Vasquez reconnected something. A crackle ran through the relay panel. "2 are live. I rerouted power to them during the first wave. SCKVF processed this. Before you found me. I was heading to the conduit when the second volley hit." She had been managing the defense before SCKVF had even registered the attack as survivable. The Vethkari courier ran the math again, reflexively, and it still came back the same. 43 lives, 2-point defense turrets, no shields, 17 warships. "This position is not tenable," SCKVF said. "Not yet," Vasquez said, and the comms array crackled to life. The Vethkari emergency channel was a thin, static-buried signal, barely above the noise floor of the Rachnoth jamming, but it was there. SCKVF heard her own species' distress protocols cycling, the automated call-in, response of a relay beacon that had survived because it ran on a different power system than everything else. Vasquez looked at her. "Tell them we're holding." SCKVF hesitated. A Vethkari diplomat did not transmit tactically false information. A position that was not tenable could not be described as held. "The station is not. Tell them we're holding." Not an argument. A fact about what the message would say. SCKVF transmitted. "We are holding. Keth, 9 station, relay, point 7. We are holding. Request immediate relief." The static swallowed her voice. Vasquez nodded once, as if a question had been answered, and started moving again toward the hab ring. SCKVF followed her, counting the loops on the gray bandage. 5, always 5, the same knot, and tried to locate herself in the Vethkari taxonomy of crisis responses. She could not. The station shuddered. The Rachnoth were walking their bombardment toward the docking arms, just as Vasquez had said. Holding, SCKVF thought. She had no word for what they were doing. That was, she noted, becoming a pattern. The humans slept for 20 minutes and woke up without being afraid. SCKVF had not slept. She had spent the lull running calculations, escape vectors, survival probabilities, the precise trajectory of the Rachnoth fleet's search pattern, and every calculation had returned the same answer, which was that there were no escape vectors, that the survival probabilities were low, and that the Rachnoth would achieve firing solution on the docking arms within the next 2 hours. She had run the calculations 6 times. The 7th time, she had stopped because the 7th answer was identical to the first 6, and she was beginning to understand that this was not a problem that calculations would solve. Vasquez had sat down against the corridor wall, said 20 minutes, closed her eyes, and been unconscious before Essikeveth had finished processing the statement. She slept with her eyes fully closed. Essikeveth had read about this. The xenobiological notes on Homo sapiens included a section on sleep behavior that she had filed as mildly anomalous when she had read it the first time. She understood it differently now, watching it happen. Every other species she had ever observed slept with at least partial sensory awareness maintained. You did not, if you were a functional organism, shut down your primary senses completely. You did not simply stop watching, unless you had never, in the deepest part of your evolutionary history, needed to watch, or unless you had decided, at some point in your deep past, that the dark was not something to fear, that you were the thing in the dark. Vasquez woke at exactly 20 minutes, as she had said, without an alarm. She checked her bandage. The gray wrapping was dark now, where the wound had seeped through, flexed her fingers experimentally, made a face that Essikeveth's expression recognition filed as mild inconvenience, and stood up. "Okay," she said. "Station audit." The audit was not what Essikeveth expected. She had expected a tactical assessment, system status, weapons capability, defensive perimeter options. What she got was Vasquez moving through every accessible section of the station in a systematic pattern, cataloging not just what worked, but who was alive, what they had, and what they needed. Not resources. People first, then resources. There were 41 survivors. 2 had been lost in the initial strike. A Merridale communications officer and a human cargo handler whose names Vasquez said quietly and did not say again. The remaining 39 she triaged with the same focused efficiency she had applied to the plasma conduit. Assess, prioritize, act, move. There were 2 Vethkari crew members, a Veth Soul and a junior systems monitor named Kethran. Both injured in the corridor collapse. Both mobile but in pain, their carapace plates cracked along stress lines and leaking. Vasquez examined them with an attention that registered to Essikeveth's carapace resonance as genuine. The human did not have Vethkari anatomy. She had, apparently, a general reference for Vethkari anatomy, because she immobilized a Veth Soul's cracked thoracic plates with a compression wrap that was technically correct. Then, she found a Rachnoth prisoner. He had been caught in a corridor collapse during the initial strike. One of the Rachnoth's own forward observers, separated from whatever insertion team had been aboard the station ahead of the fleet, now pinned under fallen structural bracing and badly burned. The burn covered the left side of his carapace. Rachnoth had a carapace, though heavier and darker than Vethkari, more like compressed stone than crystal, and his 3 eyes were tracking Vasquez with an expression that Essikeveth's cross-species recognition filed as hostile. Essikeveth's own plates produced a harmonic that she was not proud of. The Rachnoth were the ones killing them. The Rachnoth were the ones with 17 warships outside. Vethkari doctrine, Thelkassin, the moral quarantine, the principle that an enemy in the field was not a patient, but a threat, was not ambiguous on this point. Vasquez freed the Rachnoth from the structural bracing, applied a burn compound to the exposed wound, and gave him her water ration. The Rachnoth snarled. A sound like stone grinding, threat display, refusal, aggression. Vasquez left the water ration where it was, within his reach, and walked away. Essikeveth followed her. She looked back once. The water ration canister, dented, printed with a human handprint where the grime had been worn through by repeated grip, sat beside the Rachnoth prisoner. He had not touched it. "He is the enemy," Essikeveth said. She said it carefully, in case the human had not processed this information. "He's injured," Vasquez said, and her tone had the quality of someone explaining a self-evident principle to someone who had simply not thought it through yet. "He is both," Essikeveth said. Vasquez looked at her, not unkindly, the way you might look at someone who had said something that was technically accurate and completely beside the point. "Yeah," she said, "he is." Essikeveth reached for her internal taxonomy. Predator, prey, neutral party, threat, non-threat, ally, enemy, and found that Vasquez did not fit into any position on the axis. The axis itself appeared to be the wrong shape. She made a notation in her log. The human applies a constant behavioral rule that is not conditional on threat assessment. Attempting to identify the rule. She could not identify it. She was still trying when the second bombardment wave began. It started 4 seconds after Vasquez looked up at the ceiling. 3 minutes, the human had said before it started. Different angle. They want the docking arms. She was right. She had been right the first time too. HFY was beginning to understand that the human was not lucky. She was listening. To the station, to the pattern, to something that HFY's magnetoreception could detect, but could not read because she was reading the wrong frequency. Vasquez was reading the frequency of something that was trying to kill her and using it to predict what it would do next. Category, HFY thought, as the impacts began and the station screamed around them. Still pending. There was a sound coming from a human that HFY could not locate in any distress frequency catalog. It was coming through the metal. That was the strange part. Not through the air, not as an acoustic signal, but as a structural vibration in the walls of the maintenance shaft, the kind of signal her magnetoreception was tuned to interpret as mechanical stress, bearing failure, pressure differential. The ship's body, speaking. Except the ship's body was not speaking. The human was singing, and the shaft was carrying it, the way water carries sound, with a fidelity that the air would have degraded. HFY was behind her. The shaft was narrow, just wide enough for one body at a time, and Vasquez was ahead with a cutting tool and a replacement coupling that was 2 millimeters too wide for the fitting they needed and would have to be shaved down manually. A job that required 2 hands. The human was doing it with 1 3/4, the bandaged hand making only limited contact, and she was singing. "What is that?" HFY asked. Vasquez didn't stop. The vocalization. Is it a stress response? A communication protocol? A pause. The cutting tool continued. "It's a song. A song," HFY repeated. She searched her cross-species reference for song as a field behavior in crisis conditions and found 3 entries. The Vethkari morning harmonic, which was involuntary, a Mary-Dal territorial signal, and a brief note in the Homo sapiens file that said humans produce non-functional vocalizations in a variety of contexts including labor, distress, celebration, and boredom. Non-functional. She had read that word and filed it. She was reading it differently now. "Why?" she asked. Vasquez shaved another millimeter from the coupling. "Works hard. The song helps." "Helps how?" The human was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that was not evasion, but consideration, the way you pause before describing something you had not been asked to explain before. "Keeps the rhythm," she said. "Keeps the breathing. Keeps the, I don't know. Keeps you in it. A beat. My grandmother used to say you couldn't be scared and singing at the same time. Something about how your throat had to pick." HFY processed this. The coupling clicked into partial position. The shaft hummed with the vibration of the station's ongoing distress, hull stress, pressure variance, the distant percussion of the Raknov fleet repositioning above them. "What is the song?" she asked. "Old one. Coal miners used to sing it." Vasquez's voice was matter-of-fact, the same tone she used for technical specifications. "People who went underground. In mines. On Earth. Underground," HFY said. "In shafts. Smaller than this one, mostly." A brief exhale that registered as humor. "Dark. No combs. Air quality was," she paused, made the sound HFY had learned to read as grim acknowledgement. "Let's say variable. K-fins happened. Gas leaks." And they sang. HFY's plates produced a very quiet resonance. She was reaching, without meaning to, for Velthan, for the moment of rational acceptance, the place in any species' behavioral profile where they stopped and counted the cost and chose the exit. She was reaching for it in the profile of humans who went underground into the dark in confined shafts with poor air quality and the structural instability of unpredictable collapse, and she was finding nothing. No veltan, no equivalent. She had checked. She had the xenobiological compendium for 47 species. Humans did not have this word because humans had, at some point in their history, decided that going underground into the dark was something you did with a song, and you taught your children the song, and your children taught their children, and the song was the thing that you carried when you could not carry anything else. The coupling seated. Vasquez tested the connection. My grandmother sang it, Vasquez said. Her voice had a quality that SCKV's acoustic analysis flagged as different from baseline. Lower, slower, with a harmonic pattern that did not belong to information transfer. She was a miner too. Coal, southern part of a country that doesn't exist anymore on Earth. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from hers. 3 generations. The same dark, the same shaft, the same song. SCKV was aware of the vibration in the walls around her. The song's still there, woven into the metal, a frequency her magnetoreception held long after the sound had stopped. She was counting it without deciding to, the way she counted the loops on the gray bandage, a pattern she could not stop measuring, because it was the only thing her instruments knew how to do with something that was larger than measurement. Gravity's back on in the hab ring, Vasquez said, and her voice was back to baseline, the flat professional tone of technical confirmation. Your crew can move. She started crawling back toward the access hatch. SCKV stayed still for one additional moment. The shaft resonance was fading. The song was going with it, seeping back into the station's structural noise, indistinguishable now from the harmonic of stressed metal and distant impact. A song for people who already knew they were probably going to die, she thought. Made by those people. On purpose. Pass forward. She found no category for this. She had stopped expecting to find one. Okay, Vasquez was saying, ahead of her, already through the hatch. Now we can fight back. SCKV's carapace rang. Not distress frequency. Not morning harmonic. Something she had never produced before. A resonance in a register she did not have a name for. She filed it under pending. The Rachnoff boarding parties arrived at 0340, and Vasquez had been expecting them since 0200. SCKV learned this afterward, the timeline, what the human had been doing while SCKV thought she was resting. The industrial fabricators on Deck 4 were rated for station maintenance components, structural bracing, pipe fittings, plating sections. Vasquez had reprogrammed 3 of them during the second lull, producing not maintenance components, but shaped barriers, directional acoustic disruptors made from the point defense turret's diagnostic systems, a set of improvised sealing devices for the 3 corridors most likely to be breached. She had made a perimeter. From nothing. In 2 hours. While injured, SCKV found this out by walking into it, and nearly setting off one of the acoustic disruptors before Vasquez caught her arm and steered her through a gap she had left in the center of the arrangement that only Vasquez had known about. Watch the second junction, Vasquez said. I see it. Good. Stay behind the bracing until I tell you. The Rachnoff came through 3 corridors simultaneously, as Vasquez had predicted. She had set the perimeter for exactly this configuration. SCKV's magnetoreception processed the geometry and found it precise to a degree that should not have been achievable by a single individual working with fabricated components and 2 functional hands and a count of what should have been available time. The first wave hit the barriers and hit the acoustic disruptors and hit the sealed junctions. The sound was immense, heavy-armored Rachnoff bodies at high velocity, stone and metal carapace against the improvised structures, and underneath it the distortion pulse of the acoustic system, which the Rachnoff's own sensory apparatus was not designed to filter. They recoiled, not routed. Rachnoff did not rout easily, but they recoiled. Then they came back. The second wave was slower, methodical. They had identified the barriers. They began taking them apart. Vasquez moved. SCKV registered the decision approximately half a second before it happened. A shift in the human's posture, a gathering of weight, and then Vasquez was in the corridor with a tool that was not designed as a weapon and was now clearly a weapon, moving toward the leading Rachnoff with a directness that SCKV's threat assessment system had only ever recorded in one other context. A predator removing an obstacle that was between it and a goal. The corridor was close. The Rachnoff were large. None of that changed the calculus Vasquez appeared to be running, which was the barrier would fall in 30 seconds, so it was better to meet the threat before it fell. SCKV was not a fighter. She was a diplomatic courier. She had a carapace that was moderately impact-resistant and 6 limbs and the magnetic sense, and she had trained in crisis protocols the way all Vethkari diplomats trained, which was enough to know which end of the standard sidearm to point at a threat. She did not have a sidearm. She thought, what would Vasquez do? The thought arrived complete and operational without preamble. It was not a question she had decided to ask. It was simply the question her mind produced, as though it had been running a background process that had finally resolved. The answer was, hold a corridor. SCKF moved to cover Vasquez's flank. She did not know she was going to do it until she was doing it, which was the second time in this encounter that she had followed without deciding to follow, and she would spend a long time afterward understanding what that meant. Right now, there was a Rachnoth at close range with an impact weapon, and she was in the way, and that was the operational fact that mattered. The fighting was not what SCKF's training had covered. Nothing was clean. Nothing was the way the crisis protocols described it. It was loud and close, and the electromagnetic interference from the Rachnoth weapons was disrupting her magnetic sense, so that she was functioning on acoustic and visual alone, which was the sensory equivalent of operating blind in a dark room. And she was aware on some clinical level that she was producing distress harmonics at a volume she had never reached before. Vasquez took a hit. The Rachnoth energy weapon, a close-range discharge, not a full bolt, a graze along the left shoulder, went through. Essie Kiveth saw it. Her instruments registered it. Thermal penetration, tissue damage, immediate neurochemical flood consistent with acute pain. Vasquez adjusted her grip. Not dropped the weapon. Not fell. Not retreated. Adjusted. The damaged arm hung. Not useful. Not usable, clearly communicating in the only language tissue had, and Vasquez shifted the weight to the other arm for adjustments. 5, the grip changing as the human's body recalculated what it had to work with, and she was still moving forward, still working the corridor, and the sound her carapace produced was not a frequency she had ever produced before. SCKF would look up that frequency later. In the Vethkari Resonance Catalog, it was listed under a category that had no diplomatic translation, and she would file a note requesting that a translation be developed. The boarding party pulled back. Not gone. Not defeated. Regrouping, repositioning, counting their odds the way the Rachnoth did, which was the same way the Vethkari did. Rationally, correctly from first principles. Vasquez sat down against the corridor wall. She examined the shoulder with her working hand, probing the wound with a clinical attention that should not have been possible given the neurochemical data Essikiveth's instruments were still collecting. Her face did the expression that Essikiveth had learned to read as mild inconvenience. She applied pressure. That's going to need stitches, she said. Then she looked up at the corridor, the one the Rachnoth had retreated down, the geometry of the space, the positions of the remaining barriers, and began out loud to plan the next defensive position. SCKF counted the grip adjustments. She had reached 6. She kept counting. The relief fleet arrived 6 hours later. Vasquez had told her 8. SCKF transmitted the discrepancy to the Vethkari Rapid Response Coordinator and was told that the Human Commonwealth frigate Unsettled Debt had made a non-standard transit point approach that cut 2 hours off the intercept time. The coordinator's voice had a tone that Essie Kiveth's diplomatic training filed as respectful unease. She noted it. The Rachnoth fleet had registered the incoming transit signatures and begun their final push, not a tactical withdrawal, not a strategic repositioning. A suicide run. One company, full assault formation, through a breach that Vasquez had found at 0630 and been in the process of sealing when a Rachnoth came through it instead. The breach was on Deck 2, Compartment 7. The sealing controls were inside the compartment. Vasquez went through the door to seal it from the inside. The door closed. Essie Kiveth stood at the control panel. The door was rated for vacuum and for moderate weapons fire and for the kind of structural stress that a single company of Rachnoth assault troops in an enclosed space would generate. It was not rated for indefinite structural stress. The panel gave her the option to engage secondary lockdown, which would reinforce the door from outside and seal Vasquez in with a breach and the Rachnoth until the threat was neutralized. Vethkari doctrine was not ambiguous. Seal the breach. Sacrifice the compartment. Preserve the majority. The doctrine had saved Vethkari lives across 400 cycles of conflict. It had been written in blood and refined in disaster and tested in exactly the kind of situation that was happening right now, with exactly the kind of math that the math was right now. One life against 41, one compartment against the station, one against everything else. Esikevetha's carapace was ringing, distress frequency, the loudest she had ever produced, a sound that would have told any other Vethkari within range that she was at total threshold. She thought of the maintenance shaft, the vibration of a song in the walls. 3 generations, and the same dark, and the thing you carried forward because you could not carry anything else. She thought of a water ration canister beside a prisoner who had not earned it. She thought of a gray bandage, 5 loops, the same knot, underneath everything else. Esikeveth opened the door. What happened inside the compartment in the next 4 minutes would be in her official report, in clinical language, under the heading Tactical Resolution of Boarding Action. She would not describe Vasquez's method in detail, because her instruments had not captured everything, and what they had captured she found she was reluctant to reduce to data. She would record 1 human, 1 compartment, 1 company of Rachnoth assault troops. She would record the outcome. She opened the door afterward, when the sounds had changed, and Vasquez came through it. The human's original shoulder wound had been joined by 3 others. She was moving in a way that Esikevetha's biomechanical analysis flagged as operating beyond tissue tolerance. The body continuing because the person inside it had not processed that it was allowed to stop. The Commonwealth frigate Unsettled Debt docked 40 minutes later. Its medical team came aboard with the second boarding party, and Esikeveth directed them to Vasquez first, and then to the Vethkari crew, and then she noted this herself, noted it carefully, noted when she had decided to do it, to the Rachnoth prisoner on Deck 3, who had at some point in the last 6 hours drunk the water. The Rachnoth fleet withdrew at 0940. The Unsettled Debt's captain transmitted a standard engagement summary. Esikeveth transmitted her own. She sat down in what remained of the relay station's administrative office and opened her after-action report template. The Vethkari standard form had fields for tactical situation, species present, threat assessment, losses, tactical response, allied force evaluation. She reached allied force evaluation and stopped. She typed, "Do not underestimate." She looked at it. She deleted it. She typed, "No adequate category exists." From down the corridor, the hab ring, where the Commonwealth medic was working, where Aveth Sol and Kethran had been moved to the surviving crew quarters, she heard a sound. Vasquez was humming. The miner's song. Low, rhythmic, structural, more vibration than sound, the kind that traveled through metal. The same frequency Esikeveth had felt in the maintenance shaft, except now she could hear the words underneath it. The human's voice roughened by the last 6 hours, still carrying the tune. She heard other voices joining it. Uncertain, off-frequency, struggling with the intervals. Aveth Sol and Kethran attempting to follow. Getting it wrong. Getting it wrong again. Vasquez patient in the way she had been patient about everything, the way she was patient about wounds and blocked corridors and 17 Rachnoth warships, correcting, demonstrating, not once suggesting that they give up. Esikeveth added a footnote to her report. It was, the Rapid Response Coordinator would later note, the longest footnote in Vethkari military history. It began, "The human species does not appear to have a concept equivalent to Velthan. I have spent 6 hours searching for it, and conclude that it is not hidden or suppressed, but genuinely absent. In its place, they have something I can only describe by its effects. They go into the dark, and they bring a song, and they teach the song to whoever is in the dark with them. I cannot assess this as a tactical capability. I cannot assess it at all. I am attaching this note because I believe it is important that we understand what we're dealing with, and I believe we do not yet understand it, and I believe this is the gap in our knowledge most likely to matter." It ended 312 words later. I'm going to learn the song. She closed the report. Down the corridor, Vasquez was still teaching. Aveth Sol had found the first interval. Kethran was still struggling with the second. Neither of them would stop trying. HFY had an appointment in the morning with a human diplomat from the unsettled det, a preliminary debrief, the standard first step in the paperwork that followed a fleet engagement. She was supposed to present the Vethkari position. She was supposed to be composed, precise, representative. She was going to learn the song first. She stood up from the administrative console and walked down the corridor toward the sound, and her carapace was ringing, but it was the frequency she had no name for, the one she had filed under pending, the one she would look up when she was back at a full station terminal with access to the complete resonance catalog. The entry she would find was listed under recognition. The Vethkari had, apparently, felt this before, seeing something for the first time that turned out to have been true all along. She sat down in the doorway of the hab room and listened, and after the third repetition, she found the interval, and she began for the first time in her life to sing. The bridge and relay corridors of Relay Station Keth 9, a mid-sized orbital diplomatic relay facility with hexagonal hull plating and bioluminescent Vethkari corridor lighting. The lights now flickering red under emergency power, as seen from inside a ruptured corridor where smoke curls from a severed conduit. A crystalline alien, HFY, a Vethkari diplomat, whose body is composed of overlapping translucent carapace plates that catch light like fractured quartz, with 6 delicate limbs and no visible eyes but 2 sensoridge crests along her upper carapace, stands pressed to the wall as impacts shake the hull. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A stocky human woman in a worn maintenance EVA suit, Vasquez, dark-haired with a practical braid, her suit scarred with old repairs and new scorch marks, presses her bare palm against a live plasma conduit in a station corridor lit by stuttering emergency red. Her face is focused, calm, professionally attentive, not afraid. The conduit glows orange at the contact point. Smoke rises from her hand. The Vethkari alien behind her, crystalline-plated, 6-limbed, carapace faintly luminous with distress frequency resonance, watches invisible incomprehension. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Clothes on Vasquez's hand fused briefly to the superheated plasma conduit in the corridor of the damaged orbital station, the metal glowing at the contact patch, smoke rising, the hiss of pressure equalizing audible in the still aftermath of bombardment. The corridor wall shows 3 separate breach points with emergency sealant foam partially deployed, emergency red light, and the cold blue of a still-functioning status panel above. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez pulling her hand free from the cooled conduit in the damaged station corridor, the skin of her palm marked by the contact, examining the wound with detached professional interest rather than pain, the expression of a technician assessing a mechanical fault. The Vethkari alien HFY, carapace plates faintly ringing, hovers at her shoulder. Emergency lighting, smoke haze, through a distant viewport the silhouettes of 17 Rachnoth warships visible as dark shapes against the starfield. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez wrapping her burned hand with a strip of worn gray fabric in a damaged station corridor. Fingers moving through a practiced 5-loop, not with the speed of someone who has done this before. Many times before. The Vethkari diplomat HFY watches from close range, her crystalline carapace plates arranged in an expression that reads as intense focus. Emergency red light, the station shuddering from distant impact. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez looking upward at the ceiling of the damaged corridor, head tilted, eyes tracking the vibration pattern in the hull as a distant Rachnoth impact reverberates through the station. Her expression is the focused stillness of someone listening for information rather than experiencing fear. The Vethkari alien behind her watches this posture with visible puzzlement, her sensoridge crests raised. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez and the Vethkari alien HFY moving through a corridor of Relay Station Keth 9. Emergency lighting casting long red shadows. the human leading with one hand trailing the wall, as if reading structural information through her fingertips. 3 separate breach patches are visible in the corridor walls, some sealed with emergency foam, one still venting a thin mist. Through a viewport at the corridor's end, the Rachnoth fleet's 17 ships are visible as distant angular silhouettes. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Relay Communications Array Room of Relay Station Keth. 9. Most of the equipment dark and sparking, 2 of 3 transmitter arrays visibly destroyed. Torn metal, cracked housings, scorched panels. One array stands intact. Vasquez crouches at its base, working on the power coupling with a bandaged hand, the other hand doing the fine work. The Veth-Carry alien SFF stands at the corridor entrance watching, her carapace plates producing a faint distress resonance shimmer. Emergency lighting, deep space silence. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on the cracked holographic relay display in the communications room of the damaged station. A Veth-Carry distress signal cycling through static, thin blue text on a fractured screen, the signal barely above the noise floor. Vasquez's hands in frame, one bandaged, adjusting the connection point below the screen. The signal strengthens slightly, line by line. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez and the Veth-Carry alien SCKVeth in the communications room of the damaged relay station. The relay display showing a barely functional contact with the Veth-Carry emergency channel. Vasquez looks at the alien with calm certainty, the expression of someone issuing a clear operational instruction. SCKVeth's carapace plates are arranged in a posture of uncertainty, the translucent crystal of her body catching the screen's blue glow. Emergency lighting, and the visual hum of electromagnetic interference visible as pixels scatter across all displays. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A long view down a damaged station corridor from inside the relay communications room. Looking through the open doorway, the corridor ending in a viewport through which the Rachnoth fleet is visible. 17 warships, angular and massive, repositioning against the star field as their bombardment walks around the station's hull. Emergency red light, smoke, silence. The human's gray-wrapped hand visible on the door frame in the foreground. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez sitting against a corridor wall with her eyes closed, clearly asleep in a brief lull between Rachnoth bombardment waves. The maintenance EVA suit is scarred and darkened. The bandaged hand rests on one knee. Her expression is completely at ease. The sleep of someone who has decided the dark is not something to watch for. Around her, the station shows visible damage, scorch marks, sealant foam, flickering emergency lighting. The Veth-Carry alien SCKVeth stands at a distance, 6 limbs still, watching the sleeping human with an expression that reads as profound confusion. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on Vasquez's face in sleep. Eyes fully, deeply closed, expression neutral, breathing even, in the red-lit, damaged corridor. In the background, through a viewport, the Rachnoth fleet is still visible, repositioning. The juxtaposition of perfect stillness against ongoing crisis. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez waking after exactly 20 minutes in the damaged station corridor. Eyes open, immediately alert. The transition from sleep to operational awareness without visible transition. She examines the gray bandage on her hand, flexes the fingers, makes a mild expression of inconvenience. The Veth-Carry alien SCKVeth stands watching, carapace luminous with a faint harmonic pattern. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The surviving interior spaces of Relay Station Keth. 9 during the station audit. Vasquez moving through a junction where 3 corridors meet, checking a handwritten list on a piece of torn material. 2 Veth-Carry crew members in damaged carapace. A Veth soul, larger, thoracic plates cracked along stress lines. Kethran, smaller, younger, sit against the wall being assessed. The lighting is mixed. Emergency red above. A functioning work light Vasquez has set up below, casting warm yellow. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez applying a compression wrap to the cracked thoracic plates of a Veth Carey crew member, a Veth soul, whose crystalline carapace has split along a structural stress line and is leaking pale fluid, with the same focus competence she applied to the plasma conduit. Her technique is anatomically correct for Veth Carey physiology. A Veth soul's posture has the quality of someone surprised by the precision of care they're receiving. The station corridor around them shows heavy damage. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez crouching beside a Rachnoth prisoner pinned under fallen structural bracing in a damaged junction of Relay Station Keth 9. The Rachnoth is large, armored in heavy dark stone-like carapace. Burn damage covering the left side. 3 eyes tracking the human with hostility. Vasquez applies burn compound to the wound with professional attention, her expression calm and purposeful. The Veth Carey alien Esikaveth watches from the corridor behind, her carapace plates in a posture that reads as deeply troubled. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez setting a dented water ration canister, marked with a handprint worn through the grime, within reach of the Rachnoth prisoner in the damaged station junction. The Rachnoth's 3 eyes are fixed on her with hostility and incomprehension. Vasquez's expression is that of someone completing a self-evident task. The Veth Carey alien Esikaveth is visible in the background, her crystalline carapace producing a visible resonance shimmer. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The dented water ration canister on the deck, plating beside the Rachnoth prisoner in the station junction. The prisoner has not touched it, but it is within reach, the handprint on its surface catching the emergency lighting. The Rachnoth's armored form is partially visible at the frame's edge, and the empty corridor stretches behind, Vasquez and Sidiveth having moved on. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Esikaveth speaking to Vasquez in a damaged corridor of the relay station. The Veth Carey's crystalline form upright and formal, making what reads as a point of principle. Vasquez listens with patient attention, the gray-wrapped hand hanging at her side. The expression exchange, the alien's precision, the human's settled certainty. Emergency red light, the ship shuddering from the beginning of the second bombardment wave. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez looking up at the ceiling of the station corridor as the second bombardment wave begins. The same listening posture as before, head tilted, tracking vibration patterns. The ceiling is shuddering visibly, emergency lights strobing. She has the expression of someone confirming a prediction. The Veth Carey Esikaveth is visible just behind her, carapace plates arranged in what reads as a new kind of confusion. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The maintenance shaft of Relay Station Keth 9, a narrow crawlway barely wide enough for one body. Conduit runs along the ceiling and floor, lit only by a work lamp at one end. Vasquez is ahead in the shaft, body turned to work on a coupling assembly with a cutting tool, the bandaged hand making limited contact with the fitting. The shaft walls vibrate faintly with the sound she is making, the structural resonance of her voice carried in the metal. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on the coupling assembly in the station maintenance shaft, a mechanical fitting 2 mm too wide for the socket, being manually shaved down with a cutting tool. Vasquez's 2 hands in frame, the bandaged right making limited contact, the left doing the primary work. The cutting tool leaves bright metal where it passes. The shaft walls around the fitting show the vibration of the human's humming, barely visible as interference in the work lamp's beam. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Esikaveth in a maintenance shaft behind Vasquez, the narrow space making her 6-limbed form fold into an unusual configuration. Her crystalline carapace plates dimly luminous in the work lamp's glow. She is listening, not to the mechanical sounds of the repair, but to something else, her sensor-ridge crest tilted in a posture that reads as intense, confused attention. In the foreground, Vasquez's hands work the coupling. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez paused in her work in the maintenance shaft, half-turned toward the Vethkari alien behind her, speaking with the matter-of-fact quality of someone explaining something they have never needed to explain before. Her expression is thoughtful, the expression of someone feeling for the shape of an answer. The shaft is narrow, and close around them both, the work lamp casting strong shadows. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A visual impression of Earth coal mines, as seen through alien eyes that have no reference, rendered as a series of abstract images in the shaft's dim light. Darkness, narrow tunnels, the weight of rock above, and the strange warm signal of a human voice echoing in enclosed space. This is not literal. It is the Vethkari narrator's attempt to form an image from description. Shadowed, uncertain, lit by a distant point of warm light. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez in the maintenance shaft, finishing the repair, the coupling now seated, her voice continuing the song below the threshold of clean acoustic reception, felt as vibration in the walls more than heard as sound. Her expression in the work lamplight is quiet, the kind of quiet that belongs to someone doing something they have done all their life. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on HFY's crystalline carapace plates in the maintenance shaft. They're producing a faint resonance pattern, not distress frequency, but something in a register that has no standard label, the plates catching the work lamplight and fracturing it into small prismatic spectrums on the shaft wall. The alien is holding still, experiencing something she does not have a category for. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez crawling out of the maintenance shaft access hatch into the station corridor, moving with the practical physicality of someone who has been in tight spaces before, one hand braced, the bandaged hand following. She looks back at the hatch, at the shaft, at HFY emerging behind her, with the expression of someone who has just finished a job and is already thinking about the next one. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Habring corridor of Relay Station Keth. 9. Restored gravity visible in the changed posture of the two Vethkari crew members, Aveth Sol and Keth Ran, now sitting fully upright against the wall rather than braced against the handhold loops. Both are mobile, their cracked carapace plates wrapped in compression bandaging. Vasquez is visible in the background, checking a tactical display screen that shows the station status. Emergency lighting, the distant sound of the Rachnoth fleet repositioning. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The tactical display screen in the station's Habring corridor. A schematic of Relay Station Keth. 9, showing its damaged sections in amber and red, 2 functional point defense turrets indicated in green, and the 17 Rachnoth warships positioned in a pattern above and around the station. Vasquez stands before it, pointing to 3 specific corridors on the schematic, explaining something to HFY. The Vethkari's carapace is luminous with something other than distress. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Deck 4 of Relay Station Keth. 9. The Industrial Fabricator Bay. 3 large fabricator units now reprogrammed and running, producing shaped objects that are clearly not standard maintenance components. Barriers, angular and reinforced. A set of device housings pulled from the point defense diagnostic system. Vasquez moves between the machines with focused efficiency, her damaged shoulder bandaged, now over the original gray wrap, directing the fabricators with the assured pace of someone working from a complete plan. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A fabricator unit producing a shaped metal barrier in the Deck 4 bay of the station. The machine working in the red-lit industrial space. Sparks, the smell of hot metal. The barrier emerging component by component. Through the bay's viewport, the Rachnoth fleet is visible. Vasquez watches the output with professional attention, checking measurements against the handwritten list on torn material. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The three corridors most likely to be breached in the station, corridors 7, 9, and 12, now prepared with Vasquez's improvised defensive perimeter. Shape barriers at the junction points, directional acoustic disruptors built from point defense housings, sealed junctions that have been reinforced with fabricated bracing. The station is dark beyond the perimeter, the emergency lighting creating a sharp boundary. HFY stands beside one of the barriers, examining it with her sensor ridge crests, the Veth carry reading the geometry of the arrangement and finding it precise. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The approach corridor to the defensive perimeter, HFY navigating through the gap in the center of Vasquez's arrangement that only the human knew about. The Veth carries 6 limbs, carefully stepping around the second junction's trigger mechanism, following Vasquez's steering hand on her carapace. The human's posture is the focused calm of someone inside a plan. The corridor is dark and closed, the barriers visible on either side. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The three corridors of the station simultaneously breaching as the Rachnoth boarding action begins. Heavy dark carapaced Rachnoth assault troops in angular-powered armor pouring through emergency doors that they have blown from outside, their forms massive against the station's narrower human-scale corridors. The first wave hits Vasquez's barriers and acoustic disruptors, the impact sound enormous, the distortion pulse from the acoustic system visible as a shimmer in the air. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on the Rachnoth boarding party at the first barrier. The heavy stone-like carapace of a Rachnoth assault trooper in powered armor up against the shaped metal of Vasquez's improvised barrier. The acoustic disruptor triggered, the distortion pulse hitting the Rachnoth's sensory apparatus and causing visible recoil, the massive form stumbling backward. The corridor behind them is full of more troops. The barrier holds. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Rachnoth second wave. Methodical, slower, beginning to dismantle the barriers rather than force through them. A Rachnoth trooper using a cutting tool on the base of the nearest barrier, dark armored form bent to the work. The corridor behind is full of the angular silhouettes of the assault company. Emergency red light. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez making the decision to move, her posture shifting, weight gathering, the change visible in the set of her shoulders, and then moving into the corridor toward the Rachnoth before the barrier falls. The tool weapon in her hands. The expression of someone removing an obstacle between themselves and a goal. Behind her, HFY's carapace is luminous with shock, the Veth carry alien processing what she is seeing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close quarters combat in the station corridor. Vasquez with the improvised tool weapon engaging the Rachnoth assault trooper at the barrier. The human's compact mass moving with a directness that the larger armored alien clearly did not anticipate. The space is close, the lighting red and harsh, and the scale differential is apparent. The Rachnoth troops are larger, but Vasquez is inside their reach. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. HFY moving to cover Vasquez's flank. The Veth carry diplomat, crystalline form not built for combat, moving into position in the corridor with the determination of someone acting on a decision made before they consciously made it. Her 6 limbs are positioned defensively, her carapace plates raised and resonating. A Rachnoth trooper is approaching from a side corridor. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The moment of the energy weapon hit, a Rachnoth close-range discharge grazing Vasquez's left shoulder, the thermal penetration visible as a tear in the EVA suit, and a flash of light, the impact clear in the human's body language, a flinch, a brief pause, and then the immediate after, Vasquez shifting her grip on the tool weapon, moving the damaged arm, continuing. 4 grip adjustments. 5. The fight does not stop. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on Vasquez's hands, adjusting grip on the tool weapon. One-handed now, the other arm visibly damaged and hanging for adjustments 5-6, the grip changing as the human's body recalculates its available resources and continues. The corridor fight visible in the background. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on HFY's carapace plates in the corridor fight, producing a frequency never before shown in the story. The crystalline structure resonating in a register that catches the emergency lighting differently. The alien's entire physical form expressing something that has no label. In the background, blurred in focus, Vasquez continues fighting. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Rachnoth boarding party pulling back from the corridor. The assault troops retreating down the breach corridor in a methodical withdrawal, not routing, regrouping. Their massive armored forms retreating past the torn barriers. The station corridor behind them is damaged but held. Vasquez is not visible in their retreat path. The corridor is suddenly quieter. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez sitting against the corridor wall after the boarding party has withdrawn. Her original shoulder wound, now joined by the energy weapon damage. The EVA suit visibly compromised in two places, the damaged arm immobilized at her side. She's examining the shoulder wound with her working hand, the expression of mild inconvenience. The gray bandage on her other hand is now layered under a field pressure dressing. HFY stands nearby, plates still resonating. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez looking up at the corridor, at the geometry, the positions of the remaining barriers, the direction the Rachnoth withdrew, planning the next offensive position out loud, the operational voice back, injuries acknowledged, and filed under later. HFY watches this with carapace fully luminous, the resonance pattern of the Veth carry beyond standard distress range. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The external view of Relay Station Keth. 9 in the late stages of the siege. The station showing visible hull damage from the bombardment, sections dark, docking arms partially destroyed, but its core intact. Around it, the 17 Rachnoth warships in their siege formation. In the distance at the edge of the frame, the first visible light of incoming transit signatures, the relief fleet, approaching. Deep space, the station at center, the vast scale of the situation visible. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The approach of the Veth carry rapid response fleet and the Commonwealth frigate Unsettled Det, ships emerging from transit in the deep space above the Rachnoth seed formation. The Unsettled Det is a human-designed frigate, recognizable by its asymmetric hull design and the Commonwealth beacon on its forward section, emerging ahead of the Veth carry vessels, 2 hours ahead of expected schedule. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Rachnoth fleet registering the incoming relief fleet. A wide shot of the siege formation beginning to shift. The 17 warships formation changing from siege configuration to assault configuration, turning toward the station for a final push. The angular dark shapes of the Rachnoth warships moving against the star field. Their running lights the deep red of a species that sees in near-infrared. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Deck 2, Compartment 7 of Relay Station Keth. 9. A breach in the outer hull, through which the Rachnoth Assault Company is pouring, emergency sealant systems overwhelmed. The compartment is chaotic with armored Rachnoth forms. The ceiling control panel is visible on the interior wall, accessible only from inside the compartment. The corridor outside the door is visible, empty. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez moving through the door of Compartment 7, stepping through into the compromised space toward the breach and the assault company inside, the door frame showing the corridor and HFY visible behind her. The human's posture is purposeful, the posture of someone with a clear objective and a plan for achieving it. The door is closing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The closed door of Compartment 7, solid, reinforced, the secondary lockdown panel glowing on the exterior wall of the corridor. HFY stands before the panel, her crystalline form luminous with the distress harmonic at maximum intensity, 6 limbs still. The panel offers the option: engage lockdown, seal the breach, preserve the majority. HFY's sensorage crests are at maximum extension. The corridor is empty except for her. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. HFY at the lockdown panel, her limb moving toward the panel, then stilling. The internal conflict visible in the crystalline body's resonance pattern, the plates shifting through frequencies. The door before her, the panel glowing with the lockdown option. Deep silence in the corridor. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The moment the door opens, HFY's limb on the manual release of Compartment 7's door, the door beginning to unseal from outside rather than inside, the Veth carries full form visible in the corridor, the decision made and expressed in the single motion. Light from inside the compartment spilling through the widening gap. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Commonwealth frigate unsettled debt docking at the surviving docking arm of Relay Station Keth. 9. The human-designed ship's boarding tube extending to the station's collar. The vessel showing its asymmetric hull and the marks of a fast transit approach. Veth carry rapid response ships are visible in the background securing the outer perimeter. The Rachnoth fleet is withdrawing at the edge of the frame. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Commonwealth medical team coming aboard the station through the boarding tube. 2 human medics in clean equipment moving through the battered airlock corridor, their professional efficiency a contrast to the station's damage. HFY is at the airlock to meet them, her carapace damaged along 2 plates, her form showing the physical cost of the last 6 hours, but her posture upright. She directs them down the corridor. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez receiving medical attention in the hab ring of the station. The Commonwealth medic working on the compound shoulder wound. The human sitting against the wall in the same posture she used when she first sat down to plan the next defensive position. The multiple wounds visible and being treated. Her expression is the expression of someone cooperating with a process they find mildly tedious but will not resist. The gray fabric bandage is still visible on her other hand, now layered under proper medical wrapping. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. HFY directing a Commonwealth medic toward the Rachnoth prisoner on Deck 3. The Veth carries posture one of deliberate decision, the direction clear and purposeful. The medic follows without question. The corridor between them shows the battle's aftermath. Scorch marks, torn barriers, sealant foam. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Rachnoth prisoner on Deck 3, the dented water ration canister now empty beside him. The prisoner's posture subtly different from the last time we saw him. The 3 eyes tracking the Veth carry, and the approaching human medic with something less than pure hostility. The burn wound has been treated with the compound Vasquez applied. The empty canister catches the emergency lighting. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The administrative office of Relay Station Keth. 9. Partially functional, 1 console operational. HFY sitting at it in the aftermath of the battle. The Veth carry's crystalline form is luminous with the unnamed resonance frequency. The plates glow, filling the small space with prismatic light. The console displays the Veth carry after action report template. She is typing, pausing, deleting, retyping. Through the office viewport, the relief fleet is visible and the Rachnoth fleet is withdrawing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on the Veth carry report console screen. The Allied force evaluation field visible, cursor blinking after the words "no adequate category exists." The text is precise, formal, in Veth carry script, and standard both. Below it, the footnote field, which is far longer than any other field on the template. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The hab room of Relay Station Keth 9. a surviving crew quarter space, now serving as recovery room. Warm lighting from a portable unit someone has set up, a contrast to the emergency red throughout the rest of the station. Vasquez is seated with her back against the wall, the two Veth carry crew members of Veth Soul, and Kithran beside her, all three of them attempting a song together. The human's voice carries the tune. The Veth carry are struggling with the intervals, their carapace plates producing uncertain harmonic attempts. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on the gray bandage on Vasquez's hand. Still there, the original wrapping, the 5-loop knot, now layered beneath the Commonwealth medic's proper bandaging. Both visible, the old underneath the new. The human's hand resting on her knee in the hab room, the song audible around it. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A Veth soul attempting to follow the song. The larger Veth carry crew member, thoracic plates wrapped in compression bandaging, sensor-ridge crests tilted in concentration, producing a crystalline harmonic attempt that is close to the melody but not quite there. The expression of someone trying very hard to hear something they have no reference for, and refusing to stop. Warm, portable lighting, the hab room around them. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Kethran attempting the second interval. The younger, smaller Veth carry, still struggling, carapace plates resonating at a frequency that keeps finding the wrong harmonic, trying again. Vasquez's hands visible, making a patient demonstrating gesture, showing the shape of the interval in the air. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez patient with the teaching, showing the interval again, not suggesting they stop. The expression of someone for whom patience in this particular task is simply not in question. Her damaged arm is in a sling now, one hand free. The miner's song continues. Warm light, the hab room, the sounds of the relief fleet securing the station audible through the hull. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. SCK Veth approaching the doorway of the hab room from the corridor. The Veth carries crystalline form visible in the threshold, one limb on the door frame, listening to the song from outside. Her carapace is luminous with the recognition frequency, the plates producing a resonance pattern the story has been building toward since the maintenance shaft. She has not yet entered. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. SCK Veth in the doorway of the hab room, sitting in the threshold, neither fully inside nor outside, her 6 limbs folded in the careful way of a large crystalline form in a human proportion space. She is listening. Through the viewport, behind her, the star field, and the retreating Rachnoth fleet. Inside, the warm portable light, and the 3 voices attempting the song. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close on SCK Veth's carapace plate, producing the recognition frequency resonance. The crystalline structure catching the hab room's warm light and fracturing it into the same prismatic display we saw in the maintenance shaft, but now larger, more fully expressed, filling the doorway with small moving lights. The alien is experiencing something she will spend a long time understanding. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. SCK Veth finding the interval. The moment the Veth carries carapace harmonic aligns with the melody, the crystalline plates resonating at the correct frequency, the alien joining the song. Her posture has changed. She has moved fully into the doorway, her form fully present. The 3 others in the hab room visible in the background, the warm light reaching all 4 of them. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A wide shot of the hab room of Relay Station Keth 9. The warm portable light casting a circle in the battered space for figures. The human Vasquez in her damaged EVA suit and sling, 2 injured Veth carrying compression wraps, and the Veth carry diplomat SCK Veth in the doorway, all 4 of them present with the same song. Through the hab room's viewport, the relief fleet holds position, and the stars are simply stars. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The external view of Relay Station Keth 9 in the aftermath. The station damaged, but intact, the Veth carry rapid response fleet, and the Commonwealth frigate Unsettled Det holding position nearby. The Rachnoff fleet fully withdrawn, visible only as diminishing running lights at the frame's edge. Deep space, the station its center, the battle over. Inside one of the station's windows, a warm, portable light glows, the only warm color in the image. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting.